So, it's the pandemic, and you just graduated from school, and you're like, what do I do now? Well, you know what? We've got some people here to talk about that. I'm going to introduce you to Julie, Sergio, and Alexander, and they're going to tell you guys a little bit about themselves, and then a little bit about, hey, how do I get in the game industry during this pandemic? And then at the end, we're going to field some questions. So I'll leave it to all of you. Here you go. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, and I'll back out.
All right.
Hello, everyone. So we are Broken Name Games. I'm Julie. I am serving as the producer for our team, and I also supplement some of the art and some of the music. And Sergio, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sergio Conti. I'm the lead artist at Broken Name Games.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alexander. I'm lead programmer at Broken Name Games, and work on implementing everything else in there that these two generously provide.
So just as a quick background information on our team and how we got started. So all three of us had attended the same university together and went through the same game design program. And collectively, all of our talents kind of meshed together to make the needs of what one indie team would need. So as we said in our introductions, like I'm doing a lot of documentation and keeping track of assets in addition to supplementing some of the work that Sergio is doing with art. And Alexander is doing all of the background programming, making sure everything works the way exactly we want it to be, and doing a lot of Unity implementation as well. And so during this presentation today, we are going to be talking about all of our different experiences. We're going to talk individually about our different experiences throughout this pandemic, kind of starting at that time frame of March 2020, which no one knew what was going to happen. And we all went to spring break, and then we never came back to school. So it is not what we were expecting, but we all have different experiences. Like we have very different lives now than we did when we were all in school together, going to class every week. And so we're going to talk about that today. So let's go ahead and kick things off with Sergio. Let's talk about your story, sir.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for tuning in. It's pretty crazy to think that it's been about 2 years since we were last at ECGC. Julia and I had both attended in 2019. Yeah. So a lot has changed since then. Most notably the pandemic itself. So before we kind of jump in and start talking about the experiences that I went through and things that I've learned along the way, give you a little bit of background on myself. So yes, I attended George Mason University with these two fine individuals. I did the game design program there, and my background started more so in games education. When I first started university, I started working in elementary schools all across Northern Virginia, and I would teach things like game design, comic book illustration, a whole bunch of different things, teaching youngsters how to get into making their own games. So flash forward a little bit further, I started to attend the game design club on campus called GADIG, the Game Analysis Design Interest Group, which is where I met Julie. And there we were both working on the sound team together before we eventually made our way up to Julie was the president of the club, and I was vice president my senior year. And there we led a large gathering of individuals in semester-long projects working on games. So we had to organize and get people on the same boat, almost like a large development team. So we worked on that together, and I met Alexander through my classes at George Mason, and eventually we decided to form a team for our senior year capstone project. And together we worked on a game that we called Warbotics. Warbotics was a local co-op game, which works perfectly during a pandemic because nobody can play next to each other. Of course, we never planned for that to happen, so it made it very hard to show off our game that we put so much work and effort into. But the experience itself was really fun. We ended up putting it up on itch.io, and we had a really great time. So now what I want to kind of talk about is what happened once we graduated, and maybe a little bit what happened before then. And the way that this talk's going to happen is it's my experience, but it also hopefully helps to show you some of the things that I went through so that it can help you gauge how graduation might be for you. Maybe you can learn some useful things that I, like from the mistakes that I had made or from things that I had learned. So, experience is the best teacher. So why not hear my story? So also during that senior year, Julie and I had both decided to attend the GDC for our senior year because we wanted to go out and network with fellow game developers. And that was kind of like the thought of our big ticket into the industry. We were hoping to make some friends, learn some things about the industry, stuff like that.
Like, we were even selected as conference associates, so we were going to get paid to be at GDC, which is the dream.
Which, of course, that got canceled. So there went that plan, as of many plans. But that was kind of like the first kind of like wake up call, like, hey, this is happening. You're getting ready to go into the industry, and these things are starting to get canceled that you thought were going to be your big ticket in. So that was kind of our first wake up call. And post-graduation, we had just finished robotics, and, you're getting your portfolio together. For me, my focus was trying to become an environment artist, which is kind of the focus of my talk. So I had gotten my portfolio all finished, updated the resume, the cover letters, and I started the first round of applications. Probably got a little ambitious with a couple of them, going for some high lead positions that I had no business applying to as a college graduate. So,
it doesn't hurt to do that, though, because like someone could say yes.
Exactly. So, shoot for the stars. It doesn't hurt. But yeah, so I had done my first round of applications, and initially I was met with a lot of rejections, and those kind of took a toll. And it was kind of like a, hey, maybe you should like reconsider what you've done thus far, and maybe try some different approaches, see what you can learn, right? So I had done a lot of research online, like how to handle taking job rejections. I had looked up what other people had gone through to get into the industry. I started to figure out that what I should start doing is doing more research and learning what I could do to become a better environment artist, and taking experience from other environment artists that had tried getting in the industry and seeing if I could help, combine those two efforts to get me in. So I had reached out to a bunch of artists online, through Twitter and through LinkedIn. I looked for artists at companies that I wanted to work at the time. So I reached out, and sometimes you're going to be met with people who won't reply or say anything, and that's okay. And that was what one of the artists had actually said to me, was like, reach out to people, shoot them a couple questions. You don't want to ask them too many things at once, but have some specific questions for what you want to get out of them. How did you get in the industry, or what does your company look for in an artist? So doing research about a person and being nice when you ask them, you can learn a lot of things from them, and it kind of helps get you noticed as well. So I had reached out to a lot of artists. I asked them for their experiences and how they got into the industry, and I think that helped me out a lot, because I realized that not everybody's had like a straight cut, like I graduated, I got in. Some people went the education route. Some people got into government jobs. Some people, like ourselves, started our own indie studio. So that kind of helped me feel better about these job rejections, and saying like, hey, like they also went through these struggles before they even got into the industry that they wanted to. So that was a really big, thing for me to learn, is like, hey, you're not going to get in right away. You got to put in a lot of work, and you got to put in a lot of learning. So I had taken the time post-graduation to learn new tools, learn new techniques. What do environment artists like look for in portfolios? Just a lot of research. So I would recommend you doing that for whatever position you're going for, is research, because there's so much you can learn and continue to learn, because game design is an amazing place because it's always evolving. There's always new software, new techniques. So keep learning. I had reached out to different people. I stayed active in my community through Discords. So you can find some amazing game developers in Discords and show off your art, get critiques. Shout out to the House of Peeps and the Club. Those are two amazing Discords that you can join. You can find them on Twitter as well. And you can get a lot of useful industry knowledge and critiques from those people. So I definitely recommend staying active in those Discords. If you can find other ones with game developers online as well, it's a great place to kind of, group together and talk about what your experience has been. So that was a really positive experience for me as well. They also host challenges, so that kind of keeps you active once you've graduated or in your free time. You join a challenge, you work on something cool and show it off. And usually that's a great place to network. They'll show off your artwork as well. It's really cool stuff. So, I definitely recommend joining a game developer Discord or community, especially since we can't be in person at the moment.
Can I add to what you're saying, Sergio, just
Go
a
for
little
it.
bit? They also sometimes post job opportunities that they find on Twitter. Like a lot of game studios nowadays are posting jobs on Twitter and maybe exclusively on Twitter and not posting it on like LinkedIn and other job sites. So I personally didn't have a Twitter until last June when I was like, oh, all of the studios are posting their jobs there. Maybe I should do that. I personally don't really use social media, but that is definitely a good way to be aware, and you can follow the different studios that you're interested in pursuing, and you can get connected that way. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Thank
exactly.
you.
No, those are great points, Julie. Joining Twitters and Discords and staying active in the social scene is a good way to get your art seen, no matter what you're doing, even if it's just programming or other things. Show off your projects to people. Since we can't be in person and show them off in person, the way people learn about you is usually through LinkedIn and through Twitter and through Discord. So stay active in the social scenes is something really big that I've learned. Also, bouncing onto something else. During this time, I was working on learning new software. I was teaching myself how to use the Substance Suite. I needed to come up with my own source of income in the meantime until I got started in the game space. So I had started working close to full time on the side, and some of you might need to do that as well. You'll be starting your own jobs before you can actually get into the industry, to start your own stable income. So doing that on top of working on game design can be extremely exhausting. And especially because, you usually don't get a lot of social interaction, and, going from work to working on different things at home, you're always working, trying to stay productive. And I found that to be very challenging. I would go work, an 8-hour day at my job and then come home and work on our game, or I'd have my own personal projects that I was trying to learn. It's a very easy way to get burnout. So one of the most important things that I've learned during that time was it's really important to give yourself time to enjoy things, to do things not related to your computer, whether it's going outside for a run or, getting some fresh air, just, staying away from your computer and staying away from working all the time. It's important to do those things to stay productive and stay active in your industry, but make sure that you're giving yourself time to do things that are important to you and to your mental health, because that's one of the biggest things post-graduation and in the pandemic is keeping up with your mental health as well. So I don't want to drag on too long. Of course, if you have any questions for me, reach out to me on Twitter at PowerSurgeArt or in the Q&A section here. And I want to go ahead and pass it on to my fellow team members.
Alexander, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Julie. So to give a quick summary of me, I think Sergio probably covered a lot of that. We went to George Mason University. I have pretty much always been a programmer in terms of the things that I do. We worked on our, I don't remember whether you mentioned it. One of the major things we did, the three of us did, was work on our senior project together. Yeah, you did. I think you brought up robotics. But yeah, not a whole lot to add to what you said in terms of our genesis. So to start things off, to be fully transparent, at the moment I'm probably in a more comfortable position than either of my friends here. Right now I'm living with my parents, so I don't have to worry about, balancing a job to support myself with working on our indie projects. And even in terms of COVID, sort of even before it hit, my plans were sort of to take a, for lack of a better term, post-graduation gap year to kind of focus on what I could do as an indie dev. Now, granted, with COVID, I have probably used it as a bit of an excuse to do less job searching and be more focused on my two main indie projects than I would have been otherwise. But in the scheme of things, my sort of big major plans have not been affected as much as you two. So I guess you can take that as you will with whatever else I'm going to say after this. But what I'd kind of like to focus on talking about is those two projects that I mentioned that I'm working on. The first is called Tower Alchemy, which is sort of a I describe it as like a crafting puzzle tower defense game. The other one is Sizzlin Trail with these two, which is a Oregon Trail inspired food truck game where you're going across the country. And I mean, obviously they're pretty different genres of game, but there are some sort of core fundamental parts for both that I think have helped me get them both, off the ground and moving toward release as a indie dev, and that's sort of what I'd like to talk about. So the first thing that kind of both of those share is having a good team in place. And for Sizzlin Trail, we formed Broken Name Games with these two rapscallions because, well, to be blunt, you were a known commodity. I mean, we worked together on our senior project, and I was friends with you and knew that you did good work.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Of those two things, to be honest, the fact that you did good work was the more important part of the equation for, forming the team. Because, friends do not make good teammates per se. I know I have, and probably at least a large subset of the people watching, have had that project that you've worked on with someone who you're friendly with. You may still be friendly with, but after the project, you're like, never again will I work on a project with this person. Conversely, if I'm working with someone and they're providing, consistent quality work, and there aren't any major interpersonal issues with the rest of the team, I don't really care, if I'm friendly with them or not. I guess to summarize, I would say, competence and professionalism over friendship in your team. I mean, it's great if you can get, all three like we do with Broken Name Games, but only the first two are required. And the same thing is sort of true for the other team that I'm working on with Tower Alchemy. The sound designer for that is someone who I'd worked with before and knew did good work. The artist for that I actually hired from the pool of seniors in the game design program at George Mason. And I interviewed him and asked around other people to make sure he did good work, because like I said, that is what you're looking for in your team. You're making sure you want people who are can do good work, that can drive your project forward toward a completed released product, which dovetails nicely into the next thing that I like to say, which is that I don't think you can, if you're assuming you're trying to earn money, you can't approach your projects as a passion project. You have to recognize that what you're trying to do is make a commercial product that you can release to the public. And that requires, I'm not saying you can't be, passionate and invested in your project. I think those are good things to do. They can, like I said, keep you motivated and enjoying what you're doing. But you do have to be willing to adopt a certain mercenary pragmatism to what you're doing, I think, and recognize, at the very least that involves doing some, market research and making sure, what are people who play your genre of game that you're making going to be looking for, what new things are you bringing, but it's also doing things like, there might be features that you think are really cool, but, that the people who are going to be playing your game aren't going to like. And so you have to sort of be willing to cut those out, or cut out other things that, just aren't working, or you don't know how to do, or just, you thought would be fun and you don't, to turn out not to be fun. Actually, on that front, Sizzlin Trail is actually the second project that Broken Name Games is working on. We started with it started as a 2D platformer and then sort of morphed into a 3D animal-themed heist game, which we spent several months working on, as I'm sure both of you remember. And then we reached the point where we were playing it. And we were like, this. We like the concept, but the gameplay here just isn't fun. And so, looking at that, well, we're trying to make something that we can, eventually sell. And we're looking at it, it's like, well, this isn't fun. And, how we would make it fun, we're not really sure. It would require, major changes. And we ended up sort of shelving that project and moving on to Sizzlin Trail with a, narrower focus and less prone to feature creep.
I'm gonna sneak in here. Part of that is also that, like, Alexander, you looked at a lot of different videos on making content and like the development process, and there was some great video resources. I forget some of the names of the videos, but there was someone who was developing a video game for a very long time. It was an extended period of time of like multiple years.
A short hike.
Was it a short hike? There were a
developer behind that.
There are a bunch of games that are like that, but
sure.
Like they lose sight and they start to have too big of a scope as well. Like going from a 2D platforming game where you just do some simple actions to programming multiple different behaviors for 3D models and like doing a whole lot of stuff. Like, oh boy, that like it. Well, it's not too overwhelming, but like we were looking at making a bigger experience than our team could handle and make like a very nice, well-balanced game. This
is true. Although that, 360 spinning goat.
360 spinning goat, that was pretty good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. So far, I've mostly just been talking about a lot of sort of organizational, I guess, pre-production stuff. So I'd like to move forward a little bit and say something that I think, everybody always says, but I'm going to say too, which is that to keep your project on track, it's really important to both have a schedule and have a design doc, and keep to that schedule and that design doc. Although I will freely admit that I am not the best at keeping my design doc synced with my actual projects. I tend to sort of update it in fits and spurts. But I do make a point of at least keeping to the schedule. I know both in Sizzlin Trail and for Tower Alchemy, both teams have weekly meetings where we talk about what has happened and what we're going to be doing for the next week. And that paired with the design doc that is hopefully mostly up to date with the actual project, help make sure that we keep our projects, moving forward and moving in a consistent direction, which I think is definitely something that's helped us, move toward release of these games. Then in terms of the day-to-day stuff, for me, that's probably the easiest part for the most part of what we've been doing, because, we went to school for 4 years learning how to do that. So all of the, code writing, implementation, asset creation, that's all, comparatively easier to do. And there are lots of other talks and videos on that, so I'm not going to delve too deep there. But I will say that something that has been continually sort of challenging for me in terms of the day-to-day stuff, and it's talked about but isn't talked about as much, is sort of the back-end paperwork stuff, all of the, LLC formings, bank account setup, EIN applications, Steam pages, Android pages, Apple pages, whatever pages you're trying to sell your game on, all the marketing. And also, it isn't, I wouldn't say it's hard per se, because there are tutorials that you can look up and all of that to find out how to do it. But it is dense and something I think I haven't seen talked about as much in sort of the scope of the whole creation of whatever you're trying to release. And it's definitely something, harkening back a little bit, that you want to have on your schedule, probably spaced sort of throughout whatever your master plan is time to do all of that back-end paperwork stuff that's required to actually, sell your product. And with that in mind, I don't want to go rambling on too long. So I'm just going to sort of to wrap things up. I guess if there are 4 things that I'd like people to sort of take away from what I've said, that would be, have a good team, which I know is easier said than done, but still probably really important. Have a schedule, you keep to, have a plan, and recognize that, you should enjoy what you're doing. You should be making a good game, but also recognize that that game at the end of the day is a commercial product that you're trying to sell. And that's what I have to say. So I can turn things over to Julie.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. So you guys heard our backstory. You heard from Sergio, you heard from Alexander, and my story is a little bit closer to what Sergio's is. So in March of 2020, we were excited to go.
I think your audio cut out.
Yeah. Oh.
You muted now? Uh-oh. Still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hello. Welcome back.
I plugged my microphone and plugged it back in again. Works like a charm.
Classic.
Sorry about that. I did not know. So I was just saying that Sergio and Alexander mentioned their experiences, and my experience is pretty similar to what Sergio's was. After we had spring break and everything got canceled, I was kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And for me, I was in the process of potentially moving out. And so I was like, I need to find a job now. And I too had applied to multiple studios and none of them accepted me. And I was like, okay, very well. And so I proceeded with applying to a bunch of different jobs. And one specific opportunity that I was given that helped me get my job that I had immediately after graduating, I'm not in that one anymore, but to get into that internship that turned into a full-time job, I attended a local career fair virtually. So there are a lot of virtual events happening right now. And I had actually met with someone earlier today, and we talked a little bit about this. There are so many virtual events going on right now. And normally a lot of those would happen in person. It would be expensive to travel to, and it takes a lot of time, and you have to take time off from work and all of this. Look for those opportunities. Take advantage of those now. Like attending ECGC virtually, you don't have to travel.
Good move.
So, good job for being here. And if you see that there's game jams going on, challenge yourself and say, I see this game jam coming up at the end of the month and I have a little extra time on my hands. I have a free schedule. I'm going to do that weekend game jam. Because if you don't constantly challenge yourself, then you're going to stagnate. Like that's something that I have found personally challenging through the whole pandemic, was that I didn't feel like I was bettering myself as much like earlier on. I didn't feel like I was learning. Like the end of senior year, you get senioritis and you start feeling like, well, not learning anything anymore. And since we were virtual, like classes, half the classes were canceled and half the time we weren't really doing anything during class anyway. So we were just kind of sitting there. So something that I have tried to do is do more self-reflection and self-improvement. So I've actually started reading a little bit more because I found I had kind of sort of stopped reading for a bit, and it's good to get away from a screen. So my way of getting away from a screen was going on lots of walks and running and reading books. And so I actually started looking into Stoicism. The reason why was because I saw a PewDiePie video on it and I was like, interesting. It intrigued me. I don't know. It was a great video that he made on philosophy. And I was like, that's something interesting, because one of the basic concepts of Stoicism is that when there is something out of your control, then it's not worth emotionally getting frustrated or angry over that thing. Like, let's say your boss is frustrating you. He's frustrating the heck out of you. He schedules 5-minute meetings and they go for an hour. He talks to you all the time. Like, who knows? But like in Stoicism, it's not in your control. And if he's talking at you, just sitting there and just being like, I accept, and this is okay. I will be okay after this is done. And I have found that learning about things that I hadn't learned about before and trying to expand that was really helpful for me, because I felt like I was finally like learning again. And I've actually been working on a separate project outside of Broken Name Games. So if anyone's familiar with Game Theory, they're celebrating 10 years of Game Theory this year. And the anniversary is actually on the 18th, but they're doing a huge live stream on the 30th. And so I was approached by someone to potentially start a game last May. And I was like, I want to challenge myself and I want to be involved with this, because I had started watching Game Theory in 2014. And I was a fan. I was like, I've watched a lot of their videos. I'm proud to say it. And I felt like I had gotten so much out of those videos. I wanted to give back to the community, celebrate everything that they had accomplished as a team, and celebrate just together. So over this past year, I have been doing a lot of development with that, being the team organizer and main producer for it, in addition to doing a lot of programming. Alexander has been just a savior and a saint. Whenever I have a programming problem, he's my go-to guy. I'm like, Alexander, the house is on fire. How do I put it out?
Please.
And he's like, I have fixed the house for you, and I remodeled it so that it further meets your needs. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Thank you. I couldn't do that myself. And I'm not a programmer at heart. And through this project, it's actually forced me to become more of a programmer. Like, I understand how to do enumerators now, and I never knew how to do that during school. But doing this project has forced me into uncomfortable places, not necessarily where I wanted to be sometimes, staying up late and programming things, but it has expanded my skills. Caveat, as Sergio mentioned, you do need to have a balance. And something else that I've been doing in my time is trying to understand where my priorities are, like family and friends. Every week, I definitely want to hang out with Sergio and Alexander because they are close friends of mine, and I care about them. And I not only am developing a game with them, but I also like hanging out and playing Stellaris with them. And so something that I found useful, and maybe you all will find useful, is looking at what is important in your life, what brings you joy, and how can you give time for those things that you find important while also feeling happy while doing it. And I know, like, mental health has been a huge thing during the pandemic. So talking to people, like, if I call it the big sad, and I'm like, it's the big sad. And like Sergio and Alexander get it. If I say it's been the big sad, I have the big sad. And yeah, because we've grown to be so close. And I think it's okay to be open and transparent. It's okay to have that, what's the word I'm looking for here? Being able to just share with other people how you're feeling, and transparency. That's the word I was looking for. Because we're all human at the end of the day. And the pandemic has hit everyone in different ways. Like, some people are hitting emotional hardships. Some are hitting financial hardships. But together, we have gone so far post-graduation. I'm so proud of our team. I'm so proud of all the people who have persevered through these challenges. And I'm just so glad that we can be here talking to you all today about our experiences, and that we'll get to hear a little bit from you guys as well when we're going through our questions. So I don't want to be too long-winded either, because I do want to give a chance, because I've seen so many things in the chat, and I've been like itching to respond, because I also have a YouTube channel. I'm super busy with a lot of things. We don't talk about it. But like, every time I see something in the chat, I'm like, oh, I want to see, I want to read this off. But Dan Long has told us not to do that so that he can keep track of things. So I am being a good guest speaker. I have listened to him. But that was just a lot of my personal growth was useful for me this year, because I didn't think I was going to get a job post-graduation. I went to the job fair. Someone gave me a shot. And I had an internship for 3 months, turned into a full-time job. And someone that I had applied to earlier came back to me and said, hey, we've got a job for you. You want it? And I was like, sure. Oh, Dan wants to hop back in. I'm just wrapping things up.
No, you're good. You're good. I was actually, I was eating.
Oh.
You made it sound like I'm like, you can't do this and you can't do that. No, you can do whatever you want. You're fine.
Okay.
If you wanted to, well, it's fine. I'll take it. I'll take the blame.
It's okay. But
so, go ahead.
Going back to what I was saying, if I can remember my train of thought. What was I saying?
You off, didn't I? See
a little bit.
You summoned me, and I come in through you off.
I'm sorry.
Here he is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dave.
Here he is.
Sorry.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I had gotten a different job, and I've been working that full time. And it's a... What the heck? I'm going to throw the phone in timeout. Goodbye, phone. It's a home phone. So I am so fortunate to have gotten a job post-graduation that I had found fulfilling for me. And it is tough to balance everything, but just for you, think about what your priorities are. And like, if your family's important to you and you want to spend time with your family, spend time with your family. Like, set aside a time. Humans are habitual. Set aside a time once a week to like call your grandma. When was the last time you called grandma? If grandma's still there, think about it. grandma cares about you. And I know I wasn't very good at keeping in touch with her and like some of my close friends, but I've been trying really hard, because during the pandemic, like, she's all by herself in her apartment. She's not going out to see people. And so just showing people you care, just like a little act here and there, it can add up in the long run. So that was everything that I had. Just say thank you. Okay, let's go through some of these questions here. Speed round.
Speed round. What, you have like 25 minutes.
Yeah, we've got a lot of comments in here too.
Okay, so here we go. Bam! So Sergio, this is from Jessica. How has comic book illustration influenced your work as an artist in the game industry?
That's a good question. Thank you very much for asking that, Jessica. So part of it was that comic book art's actually what got me into becoming an artist. Growing up in elementary school, I read a crap ton of comic books all the time. And I would just go and sketch and keep creating different characters and recreating things that I'd seen in comic books. So that was a lot of my early influences into drawing. And then that transferred into art and that transferred into video games. So, you know, I think I got a lot of influences from those comic books and in creating worlds that felt a lot bigger than your own. So I gathered a lot of influence from those comic books growing up. And that's what kind of helped diversify my tastes and stuff like that. So thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, here we go. Isaiah says, nice shirt, Julie. She's so proud of that shirt.
It was all planned.
It was all planned. Okay, I remember you guys were talking about the team member, and Jacob Tyner says, I think we've all had that team member. For both sides. Dum, dum, dum. Right? I was like, if nobody on your team is a jerk, then maybe it's you. No, I'm just. That's what. Here we go. Here's a good comment from Dimitri. This is my problem for indie projects. Too much of a passion project, and I never get real definition for the project. I just end up making a bunch of random stuff. I got to tell you, of the people that are like, I am a game developer. It's such a low percentage of those people that work on games that actually finish a game, right? Finishing a game is super important, especially for the future. Because if you're like, yeah, I worked on these 20 of my games, but I never finished them. It's important to have the skill of finishing your game. Mm-hmm. That is super important. Part.
I mean, I no, just to insert slightly on that, I know that in addition to, wanting to make these games and release them in a sort of a longer view thing, a lot of the job postings that I have looked at for programmers have like the prerequisite of, we want you to have released a published game. So, it's good in reference to, you want to be able to actually release these things.
And you know what, if it's like just what like John Romero was saying, you are going to make a bunch of crappy games, and that's fine. That's totally okay. It's better to release crappy games than to not release any games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. So here's from Paul. For the job postings you mentioned earlier, do the job posters also offer internship for people who graduated or about to graduate that will want to get them prepared for the job world?
Yes.
Okay, next question.
Well, it just depends on the job posting. Like sometimes they'll have multiple openings. Sometimes it'll be like a summer internship where it's several things, like a programming internship, a 2D art, maybe like a sound effect, something or other, sound design. Like it just varies between what they need.
Right. And I have to say that on the Indie Game Business Discord server, there is a bunch of jobs listed in there and internships as well. So
all the
if you're
time.
interested in that, all the time, like continually, that resource or that Discord is an amazing resource, right? I may be an admin on it, but honestly, I don't really have anything to do there. People come to me and like, can you do this? I'm like, I don't know. I just have my name at the top, I guess, because somebody likes me or something. So honestly, I don't even have anything really to do with. No, I'm in there. Here we go. Would you guys also say that keeping the scope of things small is a good idea when it comes to creating games?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, of course, I think it depends. What, a small scope is probably depends on the experience of the team and how big your team is. But I would certainly say that at least for, definitely for starting indie projects, and I think even for, the first couple of indie projects that you're working on, I'd probably be in favor of a smaller scope. But I'm sort of, I guess, apply the, 5 quick pennies over 1 slow nickel to my game development projects.
Absolutely. And starting out, you want to make sure that those starting games are going to be a lot simpler. A lot of people get what's called feature creep, and you have all these great ideas like, oh, I want to add this cool dialogue system, and I want to add this and that. And I've had a lot of team projects in college where people be like, oh, like we should add this thing that'd be so funny and so cool. And it's like you get to a point where you have too many features going on, you lose sight of what the game actually is, and then you added a bunch of work and time to things that might not even make your game fun in the first place. So keeping your scope and what the base of your game is really important.
And yeah, I've seen some good games go. People keep adding and adding and adding. I'm like, dude, you should have just kept the core thing. It was perfect.
It was working nice.
And then go ahead.
Another best practice is have a demo first of the core concept that you want to be taught, or not to be taught, but for players to take away from the experience. And if that is fun, then you can expand on your idea. But if it's not fun to begin with, no matter how much glitter you throw at a pile of poop, it's not going to get any better.
I don't know. Glittery poop's pretty cool.
I don't know, man.
Like a great feature.
and you know, a couple of things with that. Like I've known developers. One was working on an RTS game, and they're like, they wanted to do all the models, and they made these custom maps. So I'm like, dude, you just need squares, and you know, put some mountains in it, right? And then play the game to see if it's fun. So they put all of this work into all of this stuff, and the game just wasn't fun, and they couldn't make it fun. And I'm like, if you would have just used squares, you could have like saved you months and months of work. Then another thing I see people do is they're like, oh, well, I want to have a really good computer, and I want to have this and that, and I got to have this. You know what? If you got a crappy laptop, just make a game that you can make with the crappy laptop. Start out simple, start out with what you got, and then move forward. Because if you're waiting for that next big thing and the next cool thing, by the time you get that next cool thing or can afford it, there's already some other cool thing that you can't get. So you just do it. Work with what you got. Oh, here we go. What is other Discord/Twitter you mentioned besides House of Peeps?
So the other one that I'm aware of is called The Club, and you can find both of them on Twitter. House of Peeps, I know, is more of a very casual, but there are some, big name developers in there as well. And it's a very positive space for you to kind of like show off everything and chat. The Club is a lot more professionals. They have a lot of different subcategories that you can delve into. So those are the two that I know of, but I am sure there are hundreds, if not thousands more that you could join and look up. So those are the two that I'm a part of, at least for major game developers.
What is that site for? Discordia? Is that the thing where you look all the Discord servers?
Sounds right. I'm not sure, though.
Discordia, I don't know. And you can search all kinds of categories. Paul asked, I want to ask this because I will be doing my summer capstone project soon. Yay! How do you handle with difficulty or the struggle of making sure you are implementing the right info as a game designer?
I'm not quite sure what he means by info here. Are you talking about like I guess write info in your
from the design document, maybe?
Maybe
like maybe making it where other people can understand. Yeah. That's kind of what I got from it. Like,
yeah. I guess there's not necessarily an easy answer to this. If you have somebody who's not particularly experienced with game design and you have them look over it and they can understand it, then that's a pretty good way to make sure that it's legible and understandable.
Have your parents test it out. Or somebody who's not a gamer.
Your mom's going to go, oh, son, that's such a brilliant thing, even if it's garbage. You know that. So, unless you have brutal parents.
The parent goggles.
Yeah.
Have some, preteen children look it over. They're merciless.
They are brutally honest. And they're super tech savvy.
Post it on Reddit. That'll get you a bunch of positive feedback. Here we go. Jessica, what you were talking about, work-life balance is a key thing, because with balance, imagine your life as a pie, and here's your family pie, here's your work pie, here's your entertainment pie, and here's your self pie. If one of those pieces gets too big, the other ones get too small, and then everything goes out of balance and implodes. That's how bombs work.
Take care of yourself first, because if you're not in a good headspace, then you're not going to be able to make anything, and you're not going to be able to socialize. It'll make so many other things worse if you're not taking care of yourself. So make sure that you're doing that.
And like in the last stream presentation, he was talking about meditation. I love meditation. Meditation is great. You're like stressing through the day. You go and take 10, 15 minutes and just not think about it, man, it is like a refresher. I know it sounds weird, but it's not. It's awesome. Okay, so here do we go. Now we're getting to the serious stuff.
Ooh.
Julie, what'd you have for breakfast?
David. Okay.
Classic David.
Believe it or not, I had chocolate chip pancakes this morning.
Nice.
Again?
Did you have bacon?
No.
What kind of syrup? What kind of syrup?
I don't have syrup. I just eat the chocolate chip pancakes.
That's fair.
Raw. No.
No.
Raw.
You cook them.
Okay, so here we go. Everybody, DC or Marvel?
Neither.
It depends what I'm looking for. I don't know. Marvel characters tend to be a little bit more human, but DC characters are a little more, larger than life. So I guess either. Depends what I'm looking for. I know that's a non-answer.
What is that show that's on Amazon? It's been season 2. The
Boys. I love The Boys.
Those are my superheroes right there because they are flawed and effed up. All right.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really watch either. I did see Endgame and like Infinity War and all of that, and I used to be more into Marvel, but
so what's your
there's
genre?
so many movies to keep track of. So much.
I was answering it from a comic book perspective. Thank you very much.
Of course. Okay, so what's your movie genre, Julie?
I love Star Trek.
Yeah.
So
The card was amazing. I can't believe it.
It was 4th grade that I was like first introduced to the original series, and I was just awestruck by tribbles. And I even made some of my own with like some of that like faux fur stuff. It was amazing. But yes, so I love sci-fi stuff.
Alexander, what's your genre?
It's hard to pick. I don't know. I probably tend to side a little bit more toward comedies, but I'm pretty picky on my comedies.
Julie's all what?
We're learning so much right now.
All right, what about you, Sergio?
Man, I'm a very diverse person. I think it all depends on mood. Some days it's comedy, some days it's romantic. It just whatever I'm feeling.
Whatever I'm feeling. Okay. I would say mine are horror movies, but nobody cares what I think. Okay. No. So here we go. For Sergio, what artists have helped shape your artwork?
That's a good question. I can't name any particular artist. So what I can say is what really got me into video games was the Elder Scrolls franchise. Once I played Oblivion, which is Elder Scrolls 4, I was like, okay, this is it. Environment art, I'm going in. And that kind of shaped my love for fantasy and creating like those like beautiful vistas, landscapes, dungeons. So I can't say there's like particular artists because I always find so many beautiful references on Twitter and I'm like, oh, that's like a really awesome piece. And I can't name artists off the top of my head, but there's just so many cool things that I see online all the time. But Oblivion was the one that was like, okay, I really love this.
I love the NPC dialogue.
Oh, nothing beats it. It's got that classic nostalgia.
So there's a question right here about ArtStation. Do you have an ArtStation?
Yes.
Yes. And so here's a question. What do you suggest putting on it? Your best work or professional work? I'm going to tell you this, right? You are only as good as your worst piece of whatever. Right?
Exactly.
So like if you're an animator and you have a demo reel and it's got all this awesome stuff and then one crappy shot, that's as good as they're going to think you are, is this crappy shot. Same with art. You put up garbage, so put like your second best work and then a whole bunch of really, really, really good stuff. And then your last piece be your best work in a reel. But yeah.
And something to add on top of that is if you have a lot of student works, try to make more post-graduation works and update your portfolio as quickly as possible because a lot of studios can tell if it's like a school project and they want professional works.
And update it frequently and often and take things off that are not up to par.
And to add to that as well, so ArtStation is also really streamlined among artists as well. So if a developer can't even navigate your website in the first place, they're not even going to see your artwork. So most studios are going to know how ArtStation works and how to scroll through everything and where the information's at. So if you can't make a website that is functional and looks good, go ahead and use ArtStation. It's a great way to show off your work.
Big time. I agree. And the studios do look at that. Here's my link. Bing. So here's another question from Isaiah. I see a ton of internships that all say you have to be a student to apply. How did you find one that didn't require you to be a student?
So the internship that I had applied for was post-graduation, and so it was actually with a leadership organization. They facilitate culture change with their different clients, and so they were opening up internships for anyone. So it was just a local virtual job fair that was available, and I'm sure if you look at your local county government websites, they might have some information on it. For that one, that was specifically for students graduating from college and like people who were looking for employment, like in general. So there were a lot of different companies there, like from Chick-fil-A to that leadership contractor. There was a wide variety of different employers there. So definitely look at some of the different job virtual fairs that you can do, and hopefully one will be available. And if you can find a full-time job, just try to find a full-time job. And then if you need it to be an internship first, then you can transition into full-time job.
I can also add to that as well. So there's 3 different ways that I know of to keep in that loop. One is Indeed. So if you're looking for a specific type of job, like if you search like entry-level game artist or game internships, it'll keep sending you emails in that feed, and it'll keep you in that loop of, okay, here's a new internship, here's a new internship, here's a new, So that's an important one. There is also remotegamejobs.net, I believe, and it has a bunch of remote opportunities, usually at startup studios, and so they'll have a lot of entry positions as well. And one thing that I did when I first graduated was a website called gamedevmap.com. And that showed you every single studio, whether it's educational, government, or just like a game developer or publisher, all around the world. And I went to different cities and I was like, okay, well, what jobs do they have in Virginia? What game dev jobs are in Pennsylvania? And I'm just like shooting at all the different studios that I could find and seeing what they had. So over time, I had found different studios had different internships, like summer internships that were reoccurring, whether that's like Epic or Blizzard. I know that both of them have reoccurring summer internships. So, keep an eye on those studios as well.
There's also things like GameRecruiter.com, and then on Twitter or whatever social media, #GameJobs, right?
There you go.
That is a very good one. Here we go. Question for Alexander. This is for you. What has been the best resource for you learning post-college?
So for me, that tends to be a minor plug here. Talks like these, if you can get them, are always useful. I tend to try to find things that are the best price of free. So for me, that tends to be a lot of YouTube videos. Granted, some of those can be helpful and some of them can be not helpful. And you kind of have to figure out how to, separate the wheat from the chaff there. But yeah, I guess it for me, it's been a lot of YouTube videos. Also, forums, with whatever you're working on, try to read through the documentation for it, which I know is be really boring. But good thing to try to do. If you have other people, in the field that you can talk to, try to go for that.
Discord.
Yeah, Discord. Wow, this is for me. This is for me personally. But yeah, Discord is a good option. Not something that I personally use or have used, but I may be looking into that more.
Yeah, this is Alexander's question, so you guys stay out of it. Jeez, he's just butting in there. No.
It's my precious.
Oh man, you guys are hilarious. Okay, so here we go, Isaiah. Wait, and then the whole chat just skipped away from me.
Oh.
Where was I? Yeah, sometimes this chat just scrolls. Oh, there we go. Sergio, how often do you draw? And when you do you do it to inspire art for work, or do you do it to enhance your breadth as an artist? Artiste?
That's a good question. I don't actually draw as much as I'd like to. Usually it's for conceptual pieces before I start an environment or a project. But I used to really enjoy, probably like on a weekly basis, I would try to do like one drawing or like a little sketch or something just to kind of get me in the artistic mood or bounce ideas in my head before I really, start modeling it out. But yeah, Usually it's just to get me started on a piece and, get my brain thinking, okay, what would that look like, or would that be cool? Something like that. So.
Would that be cool? That's the number one. Number one, the art design thing. Would
Sergio
cool?
2K21.
All right, that's right. 2021. Another question for Alexander. As a programmer, if you are not a good artist, someone's saying you're not a good artest is what I read out of this.
They know.
Yeah, it's truth. Truth. I put the programmer in programmer art.
Right. Put the programmer in programmer art. If you're not a good artist, what have you found was a good way to practice post-college without an artiste?
Well, in terms of programming stuff, lots of stand-in art. As Dan mentioned earlier, squares and circles are always useful because, what I'm mostly trying to practice is, making sure that the function works. And the form is important, but if I'm practicing stuff, I'm mostly focused on the function part of things. That said, that does get a little bit dicier for if you're trying to practice animation implementation or something. In that case, I'd probably say it's just pulling free assets that I'm not going to use in anything other than practice. Or if you know an artist, you can be like, hey, do you have anything that fits this? Do you have anything that fits this parameter, Sergio? I guess a last thing that I've done a little bit of is if you have free assets, you can do some, digital kit bashing sort of, overlay things. I did that for a space game I was working on at one point where spaceship parts for free. And I just started copy and pasted pieces together to make cool things.
One thing I can say about that, though, is because a lot of my time, I work for a PR and publisher, right? And so I am continually looking through Steam, all the coming soon stuff. And I have seen lately, there is one asset, it's of characters, that is, I bet you, is in probably 15 different games that I've seen. So if you're going to use assets from the asset store, do something a little different to them, right? Maybe... Yeah. Get someone to do something to them, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a game and they'll be like, oh, this game is the same as these, they're all different games, but they all have the same assets of characters. And
make your stuff stand out. Yeah,
make your stuff stand out. Yeah, it's not going to stand out, even if the gameplay is awesome and different. All right, well, our time is up right now. But would you all like to go into the Discord over there and hang out for a little bit and answer some more questions? Because there is more questions that are in the chat.
Absolutely.
I can hang out for a bit.
All right. That would be awesome. So over in post.
The answer is Etsy.
Etsy?
Etsy.com.
So the answer, if you go to discord.gg/indiegamebusiness, they are all going to be over there in post-session chat. And let me look over here. I don't have my list up of who is next. What do we got next?
Tom Abernathy.
Tom Abernathy. You got to say it like Abernathy.
Indubitably.
Yeah, Arrested Development, growing up the games industry. The field of game development is over 40 years old, yet in many ways conducts itself as anything but a mature industry. Are you calling me immature? All right, so thank you all so much. There's a ton of questions. Get on over there to the Discord and ask questions. And if you're not in the Discord, there is a job posting and I believe an intern section over. There's so many sections over there. I get lost. I don't know. I'm in how many Discords are you in? 150. I mean,
too much.
Yes,
too many. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everybody.